Let's get underway.
Welcome everyone to Underway. We have an illustrious guest for you. To welcome in this massive summer of soccer, he is the king of MLS sickos, the host of Soccerwise, Canada's favorite adopted son. It's Mr. David Gass. Gass, how we doing?
That was a great intro, so I feel pretty good right now. It hit all
Yeah,
my key points.
I try as hard as I can to welcome in people and give them a warm welcome.
Yeah.
But thank you for hopping on today. I mean, quite frankly, a pretty big summer for soccer in North America. I mean, at this time, we're deep into the NWSL and MLS season. Club World Cup just kicked off. Gold Cup is underway. Has there been more of a busy time in your career covering soccer?
Um, Probably not. Although over the last 7 years, it just feels harder and harder to remember of like chaos after chaos. Obviously not on the well, last summer was pretty wild with Copa America and
Hmm.
Euros on the men's side. And so I felt like because I was hosting shows around that and then having MLS, I was still doing MLS youth stuff there in between. Like the whole thing was wild. And the experience of coming out of the 2022 MLS season into the World Cup was like oh yeah, this never ends type thing. Because summers are always busy for me. That's my
Yeah.
busy time period. Everyone is always like, oh, do you want to go on a trip? It's like, I'm not going on a trip with you because I'm going on a trip on like February 3rd and you're
Yeah.
going on a trip in the summer. So they've always been busy times for me. So maybe this just feels a little bit more normal.
Are you getting enough sleep? Are you well rested? Are you hydrating enough to get through the summer?
I've been drinking a lot of beer. Does that help? Does that count?
It does not. I will let you know
Okay.
that it does
Yeah.
not help you.
It has not felt that way.
Yeah.
That it's been helping. But no, I don't know. I think it's one of those where you're like, I've said this a few times on different things. I love a big event. I love like like they just make sense in my head, groups
Yeah.
and schedules and having it laid out across 3 hours. So Club World Cup, like probably more for me than for the average person, has like clicked in pretty quickly. Of like
Hmm.
today, there's no noon game, and I'm like, there's no noon game. How's there no noon? Like this
Yeah.
is my schedule now. So I feel like I get there pretty quickly. And I actually thought this weekend it was a little inconvenient that you had the Inter Miami game right during like the bulk of the MLS games.
Yeah.
But for what I do, NWSL was on Friday night. That kind of stood alone. US then ended up being on Sunday, sort of a little bit later. That stood alone. And then the Seattle game being on its own at the end of Sunday night. So for me, it was a good weekend to watch soccer. I really, really enjoyed it.
Mm.
I am committed to eating unhealthy foods, but a lot of it to make sure that I am fueled throughout this
Yeah.
experience.
Well, that's just my life. That's what I decided to do early on, and I haven't kicked it yet. But speaking of Club World Cup, there's three MLS teams currently fighting for relevancy on the global stage. We saw Inter Miami draw Al Ahly. Botafogo defeated Sounders 2-1, and at this time of recording, we're about 4-ish hours away from LAFC kicking off against Chelsea, which in my own head, I still can't wrap around like
That's how I feel.
that's a real thing that's happening
Yeah.
and it's not a friendly.
Yeah.
But how cool is it, number one, that all those MLS teams are playing competitive matches against these world-renowned teams? And I guess what impact do you think that could have on MLS being recognized as like a legitimate contender on the world stage?
I don't even, similar to how you're having trouble comprehending that this is a real thing, it makes it hard for me to figure out like what this look ends up meaning because I still can't really believe it. And like, I would be surprised if Seattle got a result out of the other two games they play. I'd be shocked if they won one. And I'd
Yeah.
be surprised if LAFC got a result off Chelsea or Flamengo. And so in saying this, like I could say one thing, which is, yeah, if these teams make a run, I actually think it could pop. But
Mm.
I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we're kind of going down a road there for no reason. I think I said it in my weekend recap show of, I think Seattle should be proud of what they did. This is a team that has a bunch of injuries to key pieces in their
Yeah.
spine. And I thought they were the better team across 90 minutes. They were dominant across 45 in the second half. They got undone by some mistakes that how many times in CCL have we said, like, you just can't afford that against higher level competition? But what I texted a friend pretty quickly during the game was this doesn't look like MLS team getting dominated by League MX team, like
Yeah.
flow of game. I thought Seattle played like the Seattle Sounders, and like there are flaws in their game this year. They are not as goal dangerous as they should be. They struggle a lot of times to break down in the final third. Who doesn't attack from the left back spot. That changes their a little bit. And of course, with injuries, they've got some weaknesses at center back. And Stephen Fry's not the same player that he used to be. But those are all still true. But the other stuff was still true of like they controlled possession. They looked
Hmm.
fairly comfortable playing through midfield. They didn't look like the game was faster than them. They didn't look like they couldn't really play the same angles that they normally play. They just don't have that difference maker. And
Yeah.
that's where you get into the gap between them and Miami, which is Miami didn't I think look across 11 players equal to Al Hali. Lionel
Yeah.
Messi is by far the best player on the
Yeah.
field, but I thought Al Hali man to man looked stronger and looked more even. And that's the fascinating part I think of this, which I'll be curious to see as we get into like the LAFC Tunis game and stuff of MLS has this weird style of roster building and like does it actually work on this level or not? Does having
Hmm.
two or three players who are better than any of the players on some of these other teams, but then two or three players who are worse than any of the players on this other team build a stronger roster? And MLS has obviously set itself this way. I think the league didn't do enough to take advantage of this moment. I don't think they empowered these teams to be as competitive as they possibly could be.
Yeah.
And I think it's speaks to a larger issue right now of you talk about this summer of soccer, you talk about next summer being ready to take advantage of it. I don't feel that the league has positioned itself in a way to do so. And so it falls to the teams. And that's
Yeah.
like one of the things that's a little frustrating is like, I respect Seattle. Obviously, the fight with the players for the money, that's an annoying thing that's
Yeah.
happening. That's less. But I respect Seattle for the fact that they've earned their way here because they've expected more of themselves and they've built these competent rosters that other MLS teams have not been able to do for like 10, 12 years now. But they had to do it themselves. They had to figure
Yeah.
out which MLS team would trade a DP and who would then take less money to become a TAM and trade later rather than being said, saying like, hey, here's an extra $10 million, go out and spend it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think as long as we don't get put like a dime piece on like Auckland City,
Yeah.
I think we can like just like kind of temper our expectations, be like, hey, we're competing.
Yeah.
We're not getting blown out of the water. We're competing and like at least like putting forth a good product. Because
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of these teams, like there's Seattle, Inter Miami, and LAFC, they're all ambitious clubs. There's some MLS teams where it's just like you got your two DPs, you put out
Yeah.
a product on the field, and you kind of just rake in cash. But like you can pretty much say with all three of those teams that they want to be on the global stage. They want to try harder and be a productive member of MLS.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're all flag bearing clubs who have pushed things in different ways, which is the other fascinating part of this is like, I even think LAFC has done it different than Seattle. Obviously,
yeah,
Miami has. So I think that's part of what's like fun about this setup is like which one works
yeah,
the best. I think I would say LAFC and Seattle both. I think there are fair complaints of like Seattle could spend more. Like everyone's a billionaire. It's the
hmm,
United States. Like it's not that hard to convince people to take a lot of money to come play for you.
yeah,
Seattle doesn't choose to do that. So that's part of the knock to them. LAFC the same. Like they haven't filled those DP spot. Like they had the open spot that Under's been under, and now they've
yeah,
brought in the guy on loan from Club America. But like again, it's LA. Like you could choose
yeah,
to go really big on that one. But I think LA and Seattle have pushed the other half of things as far as you kind of like Seattle has made Tacoma and their academy super relevant.
yeah,
They've, I think both have used U22 spots and TAM money when they can to like build out as good of rosters. And so I think you see in this Botafogo game of like a team with Gregory and Severino starting, not the two best players on the team, but like, so now you talk, okay, can we figure out scales of this? I think you see throughout that game that like Seattle's capable of being on the field. Maybe this does respark the Copa Lib conversation as
hmm,
everyone decides that they want to merge everything and everyone wants to play 900 games a year and whatever. That's always been a conversation that Liga MX has been involved in, but MLS wasn't really touched to. So maybe that starts to spark if LAFC can like stay on the field against Flamengo. Are those two samples that you can use and say maybe this becomes a thing that we're capable of putting together? Maybe you spark a Final Four where it's top two from CCC. I'll say it there because I feel like I have to against top two of Copa Lib, and they play a little
Yeah.
tournament. Like maybe some of that happens. I would be surprised if the general population of world soccer came out of this feeling any different about MLS.
Mm.
But from everything I've heard from the Botafogo players yesterday, they were largely impressed by what
Hmm.
they experienced on the other side. Now, it'd be weird to me if they weren't having a team that has like five MLS players in it.
Yeah.
And so, how could Savarino say, like, oh, we're better than them when it's like, bro, you weren't better when you were in the league?
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I'm not big on betting,
Mhm.
basically because I'm not great at it. But if you
Yeah.
were to put on like your 1970s like green billed accountant hat, typing in numbers, uh, who do you think, if anybody, has the best odds of going the furthest in this tournament?
Oh, wow. Um, the odds don't look great for any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that Inter Miami already didn't win against Al Ahly hurts things a little bit.
Yeah.
I was at the Palmeiras Porto game. I was really impressed by the level. I thought it was a really fun game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Neither of them looked super goal dangerous. I can't imagine that's the same against Inter Miami. But
Yeah.
like, if you were trying to talk to me about scale of quality and uh, ability and how close you are to those teams, I think that probably feels more real than Seattle getting enough points now going forward
Yeah.
after not getting a result off Botafogo. And um, I have no idea what LAFC is. I'm so sorry we're doing this
Yeah.
3 hours before this because you could tell me they sit in five and Buanga's a threat on the break and they
Yeah.
steal 4 points across the group, that they get a result, they get the win against Esperance and they steal a result against someone else. But Flamengo is a monster. I
Yeah.
mean, they are a juggernaut of a team. And then Chelsea, you assume is, but it's also Chelsea.
Yeah.
Like when they're
Never really know
bad,
what
they're
you're gonna get.
horrendous.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know. I'll say LAFC because right now they've got the most points left on the board to get. So that will be
Yeah.
my accounting
I'll
recommendation.
edit
But
it
I
in
would
case
mainly tell
they get
people
blown
and
out.
say, I pay an accountant to do things for me because I'm
Yeah.
bad at this. So don't listen to me.
Yeah. Any predictions on who could take the whole thing? Because I right now PSG looks like they are
Yeah.
continuing their form, and it's going to be real hard to slow them down.
Yeah. I would say that. I think I'm really intrigued by Boca River,
Mm.
and I think for me, Palmeiras, I thought looked very competitive and good, and they complained about the field because I think like I guess I wouldn't have expected this, but I was pleasantly surprised. They were the ones who pushed the game. So for
Oh,
them, they wanted the game to open up. They wanted to create chances, and Porto tried to shut the game down. And I don't know that that's what people expected coming to it. I think these Brazilian teams, a lot of them are coming out of good forms in their league and in good
yeah.
moments. And so I think they have shots at making deep runs, especially if you're able to like win your group and set up the knockouts pretty well. So I would put the Fluminenses, the Flamengos, and the Palmeirases in that convo. The Boca fans, I think, are going to be nuts, which I think is going to be a really cool aspect of this whole
Yeah.
thing. And then I would say PSG is the other big one.
Yeah. Gold Cup is also taking place throughout the summer. Lots of turnover on the U.S. roster.
Put your money on Suriname, especially while the numbers are down with the loss against Costa
Yeah.
Rica.
Uh, I personally love that Pochettino's like giving younger guys and overlooked guys like the opportunity to impress him, but the kind of the sad reality is besides like big balls Diego Luna and Malik Tillman and Jack McGlynn, it's kind of been substandard even for the US. Four straight losses going into the Trinidad Tobago game, and frankly, I think like anything less than the scoreline that they got
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have been great. It just kind of hasn't been good enough. And whether that's because star playmakers just aren't there for whatever reason you want to throw out there in the media, or he's just not like getting the best out of them. I mean, it doesn't look like they'd be able to compete against Mexico or Canada at this point. So Goss, I think my big question for you is how do you fix this team? No, seriously, like what's the problem here? Like, is it just like lack of talent? Like, once Pulisic and Weah and Balogun are gone, or is it like more institutional?
Yeah, I think there's bigger issues than just lack of talent. I do think there's an overestimation on the talent.
Hmm.
And I've said this for 5 years now. And I thought, okay, now after 5 years, I can't say it anymore. And then you still look at it and it's actually still remains true. It is an extremely young group still.
Yeah.
And like there are few national teams that are led by 25-year-olds and 24-year-olds. And one of the things, and people just like to look at teams you play for and talent, which I'm fine with. I think that's great. There's like literally no track record of a national team being competitive with an age cohort like that. There's not really a track record for a club team because club teams you would never build that way.
Yeah.
Like if you were building a club team and you were like, we're going to build through our academy, we believe in this one generation. One, you'd still have pros in their prime who are on the team, but you would probably take a step back before you take a step forward. It's
Yeah.
like what we've seen I would say before this generation of Napoli, when you had like back to like Alexis Sanchez and all those of like, they put together good teams, they'd sell them all off, they put together the next good team. The gap in between, you're not super competitive.
Yeah.
Like you are still finding yourself. I think Villarreal has done this in the past as well. So we're just seeing this at a national team level. It's pretty rare. It goes, I think, to a lot of the problems that happened of, the failure of 2018 and this sort of like lost generation of players. The knock-on effect is depth now is 19 and 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
And they step in. And when they step in because the starters are unavailable.
Yeah.
So
And they
now I'm
have to.
Alex
Yeah.
Freeman and I'm playing my first game, but that also means that I'm not getting first choice center back, and first choice right wing around me.
Yeah.
And they're 19 and 20. So Jack McGlynn's figuring out how to play at the international level and play on the wing while I'm trying to figure it out. And like everyone can say what they want, but like when Landon and DeMarcus Beasley came into the team, they were playing with guys who had played in 2 World Cups. They were playing with guys who were veterans, and they were able to focus on their role, and the rest of it sort of figured itself out around them. And that's not the case with this team. And I get that it feels tired to say this because 2022, the convo was the youngest team at the World Cup,
Yeah.
but like they were so far ahead. If you asked coming out of that, what would I do? I would have said, and I did say, should hire Jesse Marsh. You should everyone put their head down and press, create a cohesive style that the team can feel confident in. What I had said at the time was you don't have to qualify. So you actually, we don't know if pressing works at the international level still, even with
Mhm.
Canada, like we don't 100% know. And so what I would have said is, here's your chance to test it out in live games without the jeopardy of potentially missing a World Cup. You had a
Yeah.
couple of years to do it. Whatever it was, I think the team needs some way to play on the front foot in a way in which you can swap talent in and out and you're less reliant on the talent because the system can create a little bit more, not just chances, but also like the style of the game.
Mhm.
And that hasn't really been the case. I think you're going to see Pochettino try and do it over the next year, which is why I thought it was a bit odd to not bring guys in for those 2 friendlies because they're going to be part of the national team.
Yeah.
But this is obviously clearly a conversation that other people are more interested in than I am.
Yeah.
And so I think that knock-on effect is big for like all these players. Even if you say like, oh, John Tolkien's playing in the Bundesliga now, 22-year-old trying to figure out how to play at an international level. He's playing behind Diego Luna, who's been awesome, but like Diego Luna's focused on being good himself. He's not going to
Yeah.
guide John Tolkien through the experience.
Yeah.
And Sebastian Berhalter can't do that because he's never been there before. And I think you just sort of see the knock-on effect of all of that. To me, that does not mean they should not be winning this Gold Cup. I think
Okay.
even in saying all of that, they should look at themselves as equal to and capable of beating the teams out there. I think Canada are the favorites, but that doesn't mean you're not capable of being on the field and being competitive, especially at home.
So you think that there's a realistic chance that US could come away with the trophy?
Yeah. And
Okay.
I think it should be a disappointment if they don't.
Yeah. I think it will be a disappointment if they don't. I also don't think that they will.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's,
I
Canada or
think that's
Mexico's to
fair.
lose at this
Yeah.
point. I mean, we are officially a year away from the World Cup kicking off. Everyone has made a big deal about it. Hypothetically, if we didn't already qualify, do you think that we'd be making it?
Well, it being 48 teams, I think we would make it because it feels like at this point everyone makes it.
Yeah.
I think in a normal, realistic qualifying, I think you probably would have seen I don't want to word this incorrectly because I don't think it's like a lack of caring, but like I think you would have seen it get serious earlier.
Hmm.
I think that's what you saw under Greg
Yeah.
was he was trying stuff out. They were playing Gold Cups. They were trying to open up the game. Boom, now you're in Honduras. Two forwards. We're gonna, play as veteran a backline as I can find. We're gonna grind out results. We're gonna do it
Yeah.
against Jamaica. We're gonna do it against Costa Rica. I think they probably would have gotten there earlier. It may have actually been a good experience for them
Yeah.
to like have these tests, have these battles on the road. And so my guess would be that they would still be in line to make the next World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Maxime Crepeau at Coachella Valley, and I was like, "Is it weird that you guys already qualified?" And he's like, "We're still going to be competitive. We're still going to take like opportunities as they come, and you know, play for the fans and the country." Uh, but yeah, he's like, it just like it helps get our mind right to know that we're already there and we can focus on the task at hand.
And to his credit, they've shown that by going to a Copa America semifinal.
Yeah,
Like they took that really seriously and they
yeah,
were locked in and they had the experience. I also think this is like one of m- this is me trying to like play therapist for people that I don't know understand themselves, trying to
yeah,
figure out what's going on with all this like older generation complaining stuff. I think that there's this, and the phrase I've used is ownership, which people have pushed back with me on, and so I'm still workshopping. So I might come back on in a year and change this whole thing. But like, there's this level of ownership for players' careers that I think they had pre the last seven, where like if you were a good soccer player in the US, you figured it out yourself because you had no choice.
yeah,
And it's similar to what Diego Luna has had to experience because he kind of San Jose gave up on him. He wasn't in the pipeline. He went and found his career himself. And I think that led to a level of like style of play into this US DNA, as well as for a lot of those players, playing for the USMNT was their peak
yeah,
because it was the highest level they were going to play in front of the most fans in the biggest moments. And it may have been the most money they were going to make because it was actually going to lead to that knock on.
yeah,
It's a new experience for a lot of the American players where it's like, here's an academy system. If you follow our path, you will get there. You don't have to figure it out yourself.
yeah,
So then I think the way you see yourself and perceive things is different. Also, playing in a Champions League final for them is now the peak.
yeah,
And so I think that's also part of the miss here of like in Landon's complaints. It's like, and not saying Landon wasn't available, but the way Landon treated the Galaxy is kind of the way some of these players are treating the national team
hmm,
because that's their power rankings. I'm just saying all this from the outside. I've never talked to anyone about any of this stuff,
yeah,
but I think that's part of what's happening. And I think Canada is back still 10, 15 years ago, where these
okay,
players do feel this ownership. They do want to build something. The national team is a huge stage for them, even though Davies and David and whatever are playing in other places. Like
yeah,
the heart of that national team is still guys who played academies, went to college, got drafted, went in trials, like all this type of experience. And so I think that's like one of the interesting things is because they're following a lot of the US's 94 path. They
yeah,
created a fake tournament that they won at home to get themselves games where you're
yeah,
paying the other teams to come. They have built these camps that players are going to on during windows or off windows and all this stuff. So it's pretty fascinating to watch.
yeah. As we continue on, MLS about halfway mark through the season. I think if we're being honest, no one had the Union and the Whitecaps sitting at the top of the table. But we're here now, and I'm cool with like underdogs having their moment. I talked to Indy Vasilev a couple weeks ago, and he said that they love that they were being counted out at the beginning of the season, and they haven't necessarily like embraced that underdog role. But they aren't listening to outside noise. And then on the flip side, Vancouver,
Yeah.
Vancouver found a gem in Jesper Sorensen. I thought that there'd be a pretty dramatic drop off, going from everyone's favorite eccentric uncle in Vandy Sartini. Do you buy that these teams are like legit contenders down the stretch?
Yes. I buy teams that are overly committed to a style as an outlier across a regular season. I think it allows you to fit your talent in ways so that you can sort of steal production against the cap, which I think both teams have done, right? Indy Vasilev is a better player for Philadelphia than he is for Miami.
Hmm.
And like that's not going to change because Miami plays a different style. And so he fits that team better. And obviously he fits Louis. St. Louis doesn't know who they are, and that's like on them. And like Brian White is a better player for Vancouver, or Ralph Priso is a better player, is probably a better one to use in all of this. And so I do buy these teams. I think, especially on the Vancouver side, I think they've shown as well a level of depth that like they can manage some of the long season type stuff. CCC stuff would be the biggest thing of like just historically the pressure CONCACAF puts on you and your legs so early in the season and your body and your mind, whatever. There ends up having to be a dip at some point. That dip comes earlier than it would for anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's hard to work your way back out of it. But I believe they'll both be in the Shield conversation. I don't know what it looks like in the postseason for them.
Yeah.
Like it's been tough for teams like Philly. And my hope for Philadelphia, and I've said this to Union fans, is my hope is they recognize that this is a 2-3 year window that they can win. Like they've rebuilt the team. I don't think it's going to hit in one. And so like, while everyone wants them to spend $20 million on an attacker, it's not going to happen. My version of them, quote unquote, spending and being committed is not selling immediately and
Mm-hmm.
letting these guys play together a little bit and then add one or two more good pieces to just flesh the lineup out like deep enough that you're good enough to be able to, make real runs across an MLS playoffs.
Yeah. And speaking of the playoffs, is there a team like the Red Bulls last year that you think is like a dark horse to not necessarily come away with the whole thing, but to make a real push down the stretch?
Do they have to be like deep down the table?
I mean, like at least fourth or below.
Okay. So I can't say like a Minnesota in that. I would say um I think I'm higher than most people on Dallas and Houston. I think for Houston, like a lot of their business happened late.
Mhm.
I don't want to say they were caught off guard, but they didn't move quick enough off their sales of Mikael and Coco and letting Achachi go and all of that to take advantage early in the season. But I think
Mhm.
now I would say I like the work they've done. I like the team they've put together. This is, of course, saying after they lose 3-1 to Montreal, which is like never the best time, but they don't
Yeah.
have Jack McGlynn. Like, I don't think they're super deep to cover for stuff like that. But I like them as a team. There are still pieces in that have playoff experience. They've had to deal with goalkeeper. That's been a whole thing. I think they've settled with Bond. I think that's fine. So I like this Houston group. And then for Dallas, I think if Uragide comes back from injury, I think he's one of the better center backs in the league. You can start to put together a hard to play against team. And like, can you imagine a playoff series where we're going to sit in and be hard to play against, but it's Lucho and Petar Musa on the
Mhm.
break with runners around us, whether it's Kamungo or Anderson, Julio, or whoever they end up leaning on there. Like that's the formula for we're good in knockouts and maybe not so good in the regular season. And so if Musa stays and Urgide can come back healthy, I kind of like both of those teams to be like low down the table, make a run. If they end up low as well, I would throw Charlotte in there,
Mhm.
but I don't know. Maybe that's like still off some Kool-Aid from early in the season type stuff.
Yeah. Are we able to get early look at a Goss theorem player for 2026? Or is
There,
it too early for that?
no, I think there's like already some good ones. Joaquin Pereira is a big one.
Hmm.
I was like completely out. And it was like, okay, this is clearly like it is like a fake DP.
Yeah.
But I think he's been really, really good. Unfortunately, Kelvin Yeboah hasn't stayed at the level, whatever. But I think he's been really,
Yeah.
really good. I don't know if Anthony would fully go in it because I think it's technically his third season. But he's been really impressive with Portland and like he sort of refined his game and turned stand out to me really quickly.
Okay. And then I mentioned at the top, but you have a kindred spirit to Canada, specifically Montreal. I know it's like it's constantly talked about, but I don't know if I've ever gotten like the backstory of why you love Montreal so much.
Oh, it's just a great. I'm actually going in 2 days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect
I
timing.
haven't, yeah, I haven't been in a couple months. I don't know. I live in New York. So I went to Toronto a bit more than Montreal. I went to Toronto a ton when I started working at Major League Soccer because that's when they were like great. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I love this city. Um, and because of that, I think I met a lot of Canadian soccer people. So then
Okay.
I got very connected into the scene there, which felt very familiar to me of like, they're counterculture, they're underdogs. No one ever believes in them. No one talks about them. Like,
Yeah.
they're still just like honored to be mentioned at times. So I felt pretty connected to all of that, as well as rooted for a lot of it because I really liked the people I met.
Mhm.
And then ended up have you been to Montreal?
I haven't. I'm supposed to interview like a week or so.
There you go.
Uh, but they dealing with like their PR and comms team, just incredibly kind people.
It's an amazing city. It's just like, and I this is funny, but I've always been in March and fall.
Okay.
And so I'm like, oh, the weather's always nice. And they're like, the weather here is bad 5 months a year. And I'm like, not when I'm there.
Yeah.
And one of the last times I went to their playoff game under Nancy when they beat Orlando. Um, so that was in October of that year. And it was like gorgeous out. And then I ended up, a friend was moving, and there's this whiskey bar in Montreal where me and my friends, you buy a bottle and they put it in the ceiling. And every
Okay.
time you come back, you just drink from that bottle. And every time we finish the bottle, we're always like, we got to go to Montreal to finish our bottle.
Yeah.
Then we're like, well, now we finished it. Let's buy a new one. So we got to go back. So a buddy of
Yeah.
mine was moving overseas and he was like, I got to go finish our. So we went back and we're in a bar and the bartender goes, this is the first night I stayed. And he said an exact date. And it was the day of the Montreal Orlando game. And I was like, I have been here for the last 2 nice days across a
Yeah.
6 month span. But it's like walkable. It kind of feels like old European, but also feels a little bit Canadian and sort of Western, Northern Hemisphere, whatever, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Food is great. People are somewhat friendly, but not too friendly, which I like. So yeah, I always have a good time. I go as often as I can. For me, like Toronto was my first real like MLS is a cool thing experience.
Yeah.
It was like the first market I'd ever been to where like a real market took it really seriously. And so the Toronto celebration parade after they beat Seattle, which I was talking about recently in 2017, was like probably the coolest thing I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Or the CCL final where Toronto played. I went to their home game and then I went to Chivas for the away game,
Okay.
which felt like a Copa Lib final. It was like
Yeah.
wild. So all of that's connected me to all of it. And I used to host a show with a good friend of mine, Devang Desai, up in Canada through most of COVID, where we sort of covered soccer from like a North American Canadian tilt.
Okay. And I see
So my
you're rocking.
credentials are deep, but no passport.
I see you're rocking the Soccer-Wise shirt right now. You and Tom Bogert, who's like our own Woj of like the soccerverse here in the States, along with Jordan Angeli, who, I mean, she has so many job titles. I'm surprised she's not confused every morning she wakes up. But you all decided to team up and carry the torch of bringing soccer content to like the masses in the States. And you recently just completed Soccer-Wise's first trip around the sun, celebrating a year.
Yeah.
How did that idea come about? And, what's like the most rewarding part about continuing down this road of being a capital J journalist for MLS and NWSL?
I see there's a neon sign behind you. Does it say Wise?
Yes, it does. That's my last name.
Okay.
My
Oh
my
yeah.
wife
Good
when I
point.
was yeah, when my wife was like workshopping names with me, she's like, "What's this soccer wise? Why did they steal your name?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, it was a thing before I thought of this."
Nice. In fairness, I went through 900 names that someone had already taken.
hmm
And I believe there is a Soccer Wise store in England,
Okay.
which drives me insane because you
Yeah.
can't call it soccer. And they like do a lot of lacrosse in like the
Oh,
Manchester area. And that's why all of our socials are like Soccer Wise HQ because that
they
person,
took
whoever they
it.
are, has all those handles, hasn't posted in like a year from any of them. I hate follow all of them. And anytime a post finally does come up, although they're day camps for kids in the summer do look very fun.
Oh,
There's like slip and
okay.
slides and ice pops and stuff. So yeah, I think for us it came up of we didn't feel like it existed. And I've said, many times I grew up in New York. I went to school in Boston. Like to me, sports talk radio was like the heartbeat of a lot of the sports experience. I think most of the hosts are like blowhards and idiots, which is probably a weird thing to then insert myself as one of them now. But like when games ended, it was like, okay, like I want to live in this longer and I want to talk to, and I never called in, but I want to like be around other people
Yeah.
talking about these things. And it is one of the few things I actually think I give credit to Boston. I actually think it's better than New York. Boston Sports Talk Radio. It's like fairly elite. And they got me to care about the Bruins, which I don't even watch hockey. So like it's always something I've wanted to have. And I know when I talked with Jordan, we felt like there was a bit of a hole in NWSL coverage in terms of talking about it, like mainly tactic based focused.
Yeah.
And so that's why that show sort of leans that way more. Where with me and Tom, it's more culture and conversation and news around a lot of it, with some of that then sprinkled in. Um, there really isn't like independent ways to cover it. And I know I'm sure you're experiencing as everyone else is, like there's not a ton of money in it. And so it's hard to
Yeah.
create like a enough of an ecosystem to have people who are talking about these things. Like I really struggle with previews because there's not enough people at training and the teams don't release injury stuff. And like you have no idea who's going to play. So we
Yeah.
don't do a ton of preview stuff because like it's bad. It's just
Yeah.
bad quality of what we're capable of doing. And that is like part of the problem with MLS. I think one of the things we talked about and one of the things we're trying to do, and hopefully we're going to announce some stuff over the next month or so to sort of use it, is I mentioned, like, I don't know that MLS has set itself up to take advantage of this 14-month period from Club World Cup through the World Cup.
Yeah.
And our hope is that we can sort of try and get some of this energy and sort of use it to build something lasting that can, help people be good fans, help current fans enjoy this even more, help new fans find this and feel involved and feel connected. And so that was a huge part of what we wanted to do. And we tried to do it with our season previews, bringing on people from every market to try and tap into people and learn from them, but also give them a platform so that they could be found by other people who maybe don't know about them.
Hmm.
And we're going to continue to try and do stuff like that. So that was sort of the genesis of it all. And that was the big push. And building the plane in the air so you don't get to do all the things you want to do because you're like plugging holes while also
Yeah.
looking out the front window and trying to fly forward. But it's been really, really fun so far. I mean, I was down at TST 2 weeks ago and like people come over and they talk to you and you're like, I can't believe anyone cares about this or knows about this.
Yeah.
So it's really, really exciting. And I think the 1 year kind of snuck up on me because you're like head down working on stuff. And so when I realized it, it was like a cool moment to reflect.
Yeah. And then this next section, I told you before I like to do like a little like rapid fire questions. I'm gonna call this one Bing Bong. Over your career, you've gotten to interview a lot of high profile players and coaches around the world of soccer. Which one sticks out to you the most? Either your favorite to interview or just like I can't believe we're talking about what we're talking about right now.
So Patrick Vieira's like my big one. He was
Hmm.
sort of like my thing I modeled myself after as a player. And when he coached NYCFC first time, that was like, I can't believe this. Bruce and Bob Bradley, both in those experiences, because I was like a pure fan when that started. Ziggy Schmidt is, I had moments with Ziggy Schmidt where he would like listen to what I said and be like, oh, that's interesting. And you're like, is he being serious? And that was like a first moment for me where I was like, oh, people care about that. And then 2 weeks ago, I sat in a room with Becky Sauerbrunn and Lindsay Heaps and Megan Klingenberg. And Becky was talking about imposter syndrome. And I was like, right here. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I know.
You
Um,
too?
eh, yeah. And I was like, all those moments are pinch me moments.
And then you recently moved down to Miami from New York, putting you on the spot. Better food options.
New York.
Okay. Um,
Unquestionable. New York has a wider range. Miami
yeah.
does their things really well, but like you can't then go get the other stuff.
Okay.
That's the thing. People complain about New York. Everyone loves it. Like SoCal people are like, oh, there's not good Mexican. And then you have people in the Midwest where you have like other communities where it's like you can't get good versions. It's like, no, I can get an 8 of anything in New York. I can't get a 10, and you can, but you can't get an 8 of the other stuff where
Yeah.
you live.
Okay.
And that is the best part about New York. And also, New York's a lot better than Miami in general. Just
Um,
throwing it out there.
which game gets David Goss more hyped? Inter Miami Club World Cup game versus Al Ali or Des Moines Menace versus Sporting Kansas City 2?
Probably equal. If
Really?
Mohamed Abu Treka was still playing for Al Ahly, then it would have been the Al Ahly game, but they probably end up being equal. Those
No.
those were two good ones. You played that one well.
If you were going to pitch MLS to someone who doesn't really watch soccer in general, what would be like your one line pitch?
Go to a game. Go in the building, and I promise you, you've never experienced anything like it. The drums, the banners, the singing, how close you are to the field, the tailgates before if you're in those markets or marches. Like I don't everyone likes being around people having fun.
Hmm.
Everyone likes that experience. If you're a music fan, I could appeal to you on that level of like it feels like a concert or a music festival or whatever. I'll go to a concert for anyone I don't like as long as I know their passionate fans are there because
Hmm.
you get the vibe, even
Yeah.
if it's not your thing. And I think an MLS stadium and an MLS experience gives that for most teams. I don't know about
Yeah.
the refs.
Yeah. Post World Cup, where do you think soccer sits in popularity?
I mean, I say this on most interviews. I think soccer is already made in America, right? Every Sports Center host is a Chelsea or Tottenham fan now. Like, it's not a weird, oh, also, like, people don't like say to you behind a hand, like, oh, no, I've also watched soccer. Like, it's
Yeah.
not this like faux pas thing. It's not MLS. It's not American soccer that has broken through. It's soccer already. I think that just continues.
Hmm.
Um, and so I would say in the echelon of things, like, yeah, the sport probably moves into competing for third, if
Okay.
that's what we're talking about. Like, I think the next 3 years, because I would say the Women's World Cup being in Brazil, which is on our time zone at that perfect time of year, right? In the summer when not a ton is happening. I
Mm.
think that's going to be, I think people are underestimating how big that's going to be. Look how big 23 was, and it was like at 11 p.m. or 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And then I think even with the Olympics being here and everything being big, if the women win in 27 and they come into 28, and everyone now, the face of the sport is the Trinity Rodmans of the world and
Yeah.
Ali Sentners and Jaden Shaws and, whoever else, Katarina Macario. I think that's going to be a massive moment as well. And I think you'll see like sold out Rose Bowl for a women's gold medal game. So I do think that this 3 year span would be what I would base it off of, and the chance to elevate these teams to a higher level. And hopefully now the foundation is built for it to be consistent, which is like if the men, and I think we would say shock us, and everyone else
Yeah.
would not be paying attention. I think that is going to be the start. Like, I think it's not
Okay.
going back again. If
Okay.
Pulisic's better than the best player on the team in 10 years, maybe. But I think the whole pipeline is for real and
Yeah.
going to push. And I think it's happening on the women's side as well, of like after the sort of half step backwards, the rest of the world caught up. It's they found their feet, and Michelle Kang's pouring money in to keep those feet growing and growing and
Yeah.
growing. And I think all of that continues on. So I think the national teams will have a good moment over the next few years. And it's on the leagues to try and take advantage. And I don't know, but I guess I have the standings up right now because I always have them because I always forget. I think if you look through the league, what would you say? Over 50% of teams are market relevant now?
Maybe a little
And
bit
like the markets
more.
are normally the markets are normally the smaller markets or the markets
Yeah.
that don't have a full complement of 5 pro teams, whatever it
Yeah.
is. But like, if you look at right now the West, I think San Diego's done well off the bat.
Hmm.
Minnesota, Portland, LAFC, Seattle, Austin. That's down to eighth in the West right now.
Yeah.
San Jose struggles, Colorado struggles, Dallas struggles, Houston struggles. I think RSL and SKC are fine, and I think St. Louis and the Galaxy are fine. That's the Western Conference. That's over
Yeah.
half. So I think that a lot of these teams have already moved in the right direction. I think the World Cup will help them. Of the like,
Hmm.
you watch soccer, then you ask for the experts, and the experts end up being now the team in your market.
Yeah. All right. Well,
That wasn't a bing
that
bong answer. That wasn't close.
it's fine. It was very passionate. But that has been the game Bing Bong. And this has been Goss's time
You
here
don't
on
want to
Either
ask
Way.
me who's going to replace Tibbs in the end of that? No, just
If
kidding.
you want to,
No, I
it's
don't.
not going to be Jason Kidd. I'll tell you that.
It might be. I have no idea what's happening.
But yeah, I mentioned it when reached out to you, but I just wanted to say thank you again for being the inspiration for me getting this podcast off the ground. Something you said on Extra Time that, about getting people involved in this game and covering
Mm,
it. you put out that call to action, and because you did, in a couple hours, I'm heading to Carson to watch Panama versus Guadalupe
Hell
on a
yes.
Monday afternoon.
Hell
So
yes.
thank you for that, and thank you for being so inviting. It's a pleasure to chat with you. Uh, Anybody who listens to this probably already listens to you, but do you want to tell everyone where they can find you on your socials and what you're doing of the many things that you have going on?
Yes. Yeah, I would say for the most part, go to Soccerwise. So it's spelled like it sounds, one word, and then HQ for all of our socials. But anywhere you get your podcast, we also stream live fairly often on YouTube, which, come on in, ask questions, be in the chat. Like we love that. And I also just launched the official podcast for the US Soccer Federation.
Hmm.
So our special episode last year was the 1 year out episode. As I mentioned, I got to sit down with Becky Sarabon and Lindsay Heaps and Megan Klingenberg. That will be coming out later this week, I think. We've got
Okay.
time lined up with Emma Hayes. Like, we're going to be doing some really fun stuff there. We're not going to be breaking down the game because we're official and that's not our spot.
Hmm.
And so my hope is, I think more for people who are already fans, is finding reasons to connect with players. I know growing up, like that was a huge part of like finding out, what Landon was like off the field and Jay Demerit's story and like all
Yeah.
these things that sucked me into the game and, being like, oh, I played at a field that Josie Altidore played for. And like all that type of stuff really brought me in. So my hope is that we can sort of do that where I think a lot of these players, because they've come through in Europe on the men's side and on the women's side are so young, we haven't really had the chance to like get to know them yet.
Yeah.
And so that's the goal of what we're trying to accomplish. So you can follow me in all those places.
Awesome. We'll put links below. Thank
And
you.
and thank you for having me. Thank you for the kind words. I'm really glad that it's worked out. I like I said, you don't think anyone's really listening when you do
Yeah,
these things. So it's really, really special to hear that. And I'm glad I could come on and join.
I appreciate it.
Underway has been brought to you by 818 Productions. Any use of Underway, either acquired through podcast or video format that is captured by a third party with proper credentials, requires the direct written consent of 818 Productions and must be used in compliance with all requirements and restrictions stated therein.